Imagine emotions as the secret ingredient in learning. Recent studies reveal their profound impact on educational psychology, especially in language acquisition. How do emotions shape our ability to learn a new language? Here is a breakdown of epistemic emotions, including a definition of the term and a categorized list of the emotions themselves. Now, some may be asking, what does epistemic mean? The word epistemic comes from the Greek word episteme, which means knowledge or understanding. In psychology and cognitive science, epistemic refers to anything relating to knowledge, how we acquire it, and how we validate it. Therefore, epistemic emotions, also called intellectual emotions, are the feelings that arise specifically when we are processing information. They act as a feedback system for your brain. They tell you things like, I need more information, curiosity, or this doesn't make sense, confusion, or I have figured it out, eureka, joy. Now, let's take a moment to understand the spectrum of epistemic emotions. We mentioned curiosity, surprise, confusion, and wonder. It is important to note that these are the core epistemic emotions. However, researchers usually categorize them into families based on whether they motivate us to approach a problem or withdraw from it. Here is the comprehensive list. Let's start with the approach emotions, the motivators. These arise when knowledge is incomplete, but the learner feels capable of finding the answer. They drive engagement like curiosity, the desire to close an information gap. It is the itch to know. Next, we have interest, a milder, more sustained form of curiosity, a willingness to engage with a topic over time, as well as wonder, a feeling of admiration caused by something beautiful, unexpected, or unfamiliar. It often precedes deep inquiry. And we can't forget about hope, epistemic, the anticipation that a problem can be solved or knowledge can be gained. Now let us study the conflict emotions, the signals. These arise when new information clashes with what you already know or expect. These are critical for deep learning because they force the brain to stop and reassess. Some examples are surprise, the immediate reaction when an expectation is violated. It resets attention. And then there's confusion, a signal that current mental models are insufficient to understand the input. While often viewed negatively, mild confusion is actually necessary for complex learning, as well as doubt and skepticism, a feeling of uncertainty regarding the truth or reliability of information. Next, we have anxiety, epistemic, worry related to one's competence or the difficulty of the task, for example, I will never understand this. Finally, let's take a look at the outcome emotions, the reward or penalty. These occur after a learning task is completed or abandoned. Examples include joy of verification, eureka! The intense pleasure of suddenly understanding a complex concept or solving a problem. Next, we have pride, epistemic, satisfaction derived from the intellectual achievement itself, as well as awe, a sense of vastness that transcends current understanding. It is similar to wonder, but often more overwhelming and can lead to a shift in worldview. Next, there's frustration, which arises when an obstacle to knowledge seems insurmountable or progress is blocked. And finally, boredom, the distinct lack of epistemic stimulation. It signals that the information is either too easy, already known, or too difficult, meaningless, leading to disengagement. Why is it important to distinguish emotions? In language learning or problem solving, distinguishing between these emotions is vital because they require different interventions. Consider these emotions as internal navigation systems. Curiosity acts as a green light, signaling, keep going, you are on the right track. Confusion, conversely, is a stop sign. It warns, pause, you need a new strategy or a missing piece of information. Frustration alerts you that the challenge level is too high. The gap between what you know and what you need to know is too wide. Finally, boredom indicates a lack of stimulation, simply stating, this activity is no longer providing new information. Epistemic emotions are tied to our encounters with knowledge-related challenges. They include curiosity, surprise, and confusion, each playing a unique role in how we acquire and process information. These emotions are not just feelings. They influence attention, memory, and motivation. Understanding them can unlock new ways to engage learners in the classroom. This chart illustrates the powerful feedback loop where emotion acts as the gatekeeper for attention, which in turn dictates the strength of memory encoding. It visualizes how specific emotional states, particularly high arousal ones like curiosity or surprise, function as a cognitive highlighter, signaling the brain to prioritize and focus its limited resources on the immediate task. Because the brain is biologically wired to store experiences that carry emotional weight, this heightened state of attention ensures that information is not just passively received, but is deeply embedded into long-term memory, effectively demonstrating that we remember best what we feel most deeply. Emotions direct attention and sustain effort. Positive emotions like curiosity and surprise enhance intrinsic motivation, while even confusion can be productive if resolved successfully. Curiosity arises when learners recognize a gap in their knowledge. Surprise heightens attention, making unexpected events and language content more memorable. This graphic maps the specific cognitive pathway where surprise serves as the initial spark, a prediction error that forces the brain to wake up and pay attention by breaking an expected pattern. This immediate alert is then fueled by curiosity, the sustained desire to close the resulting information gap, which primes the hippocampus for learning. The convergence of these two powerful epistemic emotions creates the optimal neurochemical environment for deep encoding, directly leading to superior information retention compared to passive learning methods. Curiosity drives learners to fill in the blanks, enhancing engagement. Surprise, like discovering idioms, creates emotional arousal that aids retention. When managed well, confusion drives deeper analysis. The process of untangling a linguistic conflict, like decoding a nonsensical idiom, forces the brain to engage more fully, thereby strengthening memory and comprehension. Balancing emotional intensity is key. Provide enough curiosity, surprise, or confusion to motivate learners without causing cognitive overload or frustration. Scaffolding, guided discovery, and reflective activities help achieve this balance, creating a productive, emotional environment in the classroom. Let's walk through a lesson plan. Start with a warm-up discussion about surprising or confusing moments in learning English. How did these emotions help retention? Engage learners with tasks that evoke curiosity, surprise, and confusion. Use incomplete dialogues, idioms, and unexpected twists to spark emotional responses. Encourage reflection. Ask students which emotion helped them learn the most and why. This reflection deepens their understanding of the role emotions play in learning. This chart visualizes learning not as a linear ascent, but as a narrative arc that inevitably moves through a valley of struggle. It demonstrates that the dip into negative emotions like confusion, doubt, and frustration is not a sign of failure, but a necessary developmental phase where the hardest cognitive work takes place. By mapping this journey, students can see that the path to mastery and pride requires passing through uncertainty, effectively reframing their stuck moments as evidence that deep learning is currently in progress. Encourage students to reflect on their emotional experiences in learning. Understanding these emotions can transform their personal learning journeys. Emotions are central to learning. By welcoming curiosity, surprise, and manageable confusion, we can make learning more powerful and engaging. Epistemic emotions represent a promising frontier in TESOL pedagogy. They transform classrooms into spaces of discovery and engagement. By understanding how curiosity, surprise, and confusion function, educators can design experiences that motivate and deepen language learning. We've explored the role of emotions in learning, focusing on epistemic emotions like curiosity, surprise, and confusion. Now, let's spark these emotions in our students and enhance their motivation and engagement. By integrating these emotions into lessons, you'll create a dynamic learning environment. Emotions are not obstacles, but catalysts for deeper learning. Let's recap. Emotions are complex psychological states that involve physiological arousal, expressive behaviors, and conscious experience, acting as a feedback system for how we interact with the world. Emotions can be categorized into two broad groups in the context of learning: epistemic emotions, which relate to the knowledge-building process itself, and achievement or social emotions, which relate to the outcome of learning or social evaluation. The full list of epistemic emotions specifically includes the approach emotions: curiosity, interest, wonder, hope; the conflict emotions: surprise, confusion, doubt, anxiety; and the outcome emotions: joy of verification, epistemic pride, awe, frustration, boredom. The remaining emotions are distinct because they are not about the information itself, but rather our performance or social standing. These include enjoyment, general pleasure, pride, ego-based, anger, shame, hopelessness, and relief. The idea of relief is the relaxation of tension that occurs when a feared negative outcome, like failing a test or looking foolish, is avoided, or a demanding task is simply over. Start incorporating epistemic emotions into your teaching. Experiment with curiosity-driven tasks and surprise elements. Let's transform education together, one emotion at a time.